Going to introduce our speaker. Nicole Baker-Rosa is the head of human design at Kedge, which is a global strategic design, foresight, creativity, and innovation firm based here in Orlando, which is very cool. She leads the organization's daily operations and people development efforts, ensuring a human-centric culture across the Kedge ecosystem. She is also a lead instructor for the Futures School, a foresight development platform. Nicole is an experienced speaker and a curriculum developer, partnering with a variety of industries and fields. She has previously worked in the continuing education sector, shaping, executing, and analyzing non-credit online and face-to-face program offerings. She holds a Master of Arts in Interpersonal Communication and Diversity certificates from the University of Central Florida, as well as a Bachelor of Science from UF. Go Gators. Sorry. She is a published author in journals discussing topics such as generational perceptions in the workplace and organizational communication rules. Nicole serves as a member at large for the Greater Orlando Organization Development Network and belongs to the Association of Professional Futurists. And with that, please join me in welcoming Nicole.
Thank you so much. How's everyone doing? Okay, so if you were with me last time, the only thing that I require is energy, okay? I know that it's early in the morning, but I feed off of all of you. So how are you doing? Great. Woo, that's better. So I'm thrilled to be back with you. We joke because we feel like we should have an office here at the OEP because we've done so much work with them over the last year and a half. So we'll talk a bit more about how that work launched at that time and what that means, and you'll actually do an exercise today building off of that work. But in addition to that, we've worked with YPAC, Leadership Orlando, and then building the new Leadership Orlando 2.0 that just wrapped up. So always a fantastic time to be with all of you. I'm really excited about our topic today, about how foresight shapes community building, and specifically to talk with all of you about that, because we are the young leaders of this community. And not only do we have the opportunity to create what we want the future of Central Florida to be, but it's our responsibility. It's not an option, it's not a choice, it's a responsibility. And there's actually a strategic way to make those visions of what we want our community to be happen. And that's what I want to talk to you a bit about today. Okay, so I want to share with you a little more about my field of foresight and what we're referred to as futurists, give you some practical examples, and then put you to work. So what I teach you allow you to really navigate and get in the weeds and actually take a pledge of what your responsibility will be now that you've learned about this field to the Central Florida community. Sound good? And we'll have fun. That's allowed. It's not happy hour. I'm sorry, there's no mimosas or anything, but we'll have fun, okay? Okay, so I don't think anybody here would argue that where we sit right now is a very different time than we've ever experienced before, right? I shared with you last time that the military coined an acronym, VUCA, to describe the situation that they were experiencing in Afghanistan. They said it was extremely volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous, right? And leaders and organizations heard this acronym and said, this is really describing the global landscape that we're experiencing. So with that said, we're noticing that our systems, our mindsets, our models are failing us. They feel like industrial age relics, very antiquated. And if you think how many times you ask yourself in one day, or even proclaim it to your colleagues and your team members, that there has to be a better way, right? And we all have different reasons why we say that, but we feel that something is broken. And what foresight can do is really help you in that broken environment. Now, as people feel themselves in this VUCA landscape, it's been great because it's drawn more attention to foresight. They're discovering that there is this field that's 40 plus years old that exists. People come to us all the time and say, oh my goodness, this is what I've been looking for. I didn't know that it was there, but this is what I'm looking for. So that's a great opportunity for us, but it's also a time of educating people what this is, because there's a lot of misconceptions about foresight and futures thinking and what that means. So today I want to debunk some of those myths to share with you more about my field and what we actually do and the benefits and values of it. So myth number one, this is very common. Futurists predict the future. So when I'm at networking events or just meeting people informally in small talk, I always dread the question, what do you do? Because it's not, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not something that people understand. It takes a bit to describe what it is. And I tap into my interpersonal communication academic background and try to seize up the situation quickly. Is this person actually curious and interested, or is the first myth going to come, right? Because when you say futurist, then all of a sudden the responses follow, where's your crystal ball? Do you know the winning lottery numbers? Are you a psychic? Can you tell me what will happen? No, 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 no. If I had that superpower, as much as I love what I do, I would not be here because I'd already know my destiny and all of our destinies, and we wouldn't need to be having this conversation. But what I do have is the next best thing, and that's strategic foresight. So in foresight, although we cannot predict the future and say exactly what will happen, we can map the future. And how do we map the future? So our responsibility is to look to the external environment to see what is happening in society, technology, the economy, the environment, and policy, and understand all of the connections of that information and how it will impact our different industries and our organizations, and make multiple maps of what those possibilities could be. Now you might be thinking, this sounds very similar to what I already do in my organization. Perhaps it sounds like 5-year plans or forecasting, and while there's some similarities, it's a very different approach. And let me share why. The first thing is those methodologies are an inside-out approach. So we're planning based on all of the constraints or what's keeping us up at night in our organizations, then looking to our industry, then looking to that external environment and picking and choosing things we feel that we should be concerned about. Foresight starts from that external environment and makes those connections back in. And a major difference from, let's take forecasting from strategic foresight, is that forecasting projects forward figures, right, of variables, and creates this one linear official future, all right? So we're saying that only one possibility might unfold. It's completely quantitative, and when we make those plans, they're satisfying at first because their numbers and the columns all match, and maybe you highlighted the last column to make you feel good. But everybody knows you go through that effort, and it's not going to last 5 years, let alone maybe a few weeks, because variables are changing constantly in this environment, all right? So what foresight allows you to do is take all of those insights and really map simultaneous multiples so that you're not brittle and vulnerable from just one future in your planning efforts, but you have a cone of possibilities. You see how they might unfold in different aspects, and then you can pressure test strategies or for your organizations, your communities, yourself, and see if they will really uphold in these maps or scenarios that you've developed, okay? And as a result, that makes us adaptive, resilient, and transformative leaders, and in turn ensure that we have adaptive, resilient, transformative products, experiences, strategies, you name it. Okay, so in just a second, I am going to show you an example of a scenario video, okay? And now in good foresight work, I just told you there would be multiple scenarios, right, for you to immerse yourself in. But know that scenarios are based on a plethora of research, data, creativity, and intuition. So I'm going to talk over this example scenario. This was built by an individual about in 2016. and he wanted to show the convergence of the physical and digital environment in the future and immerse stakeholders to live and breathe in that experience, okay? So as you watch it, you're going to see a lot happening. The video is called Hyperreality, so if that doesn't set the stage for you. All right, so just try to pick up on different things you're seeing, and I'll share with you different aspects that are happening as well. All right, and the next test is that it plays. Okay. Volume's not important. So you can see that this person, it's a very gamified life. You can see augmented reality is overlaid on everything. There's personalized ads that target to this individual. An incoming call from the inspiration guru. So that points to that there's this aspect of wellness that is very important in the future and kind of this whole me. You can see there's instant translation. So she's speaking Spanish, this is in Colombia, and he has a different dialect and it's instantly translating. You can see that it has jobs posting up, so we can see we're in a gig economy. And there's bonus points gamifying life for different jobs that she would take. There's a lot going on, there's a lot of noise for her to concentrate on, and this is interesting. She types into Google, "Who am I?" and her identity pops up here. She has a lack of achievements, it's telling her where she's going and when she should get off. Notice that she's taking public transportation still. And she's wanting to reset her identity, but does she have enough points? She could risk erasing her identity. Next stop downtown, you can see very urban environment. Interesting, the religious personalization, you can see Jesus as an ad. Well, it just went away, but it was up here. Okay, and so she also got points for taking public transportation. So if you're interested in this, Hyperreality, 6 minutes long, it goes on and on. She goes through the grocery store and you can see the aspects of that. But know that something like this is based on trends and data to be able to create this. But this is creating a provocative environment to immerse people in to see new possibilities of the future. So we're not thinking exactly in the environment that we know today. So what did you think about that? There's a lot going on.
It looks terrible.
Terrified. What was another one?
Sensory overload.
Sensory overload. You don't want to be in that future. So again, if this was a true suite of scenarios, there would be 2 or more that paint a very different outcome of what this could be. This was all focused on blurring realities, the physical and digital. But I thought it was an interesting example to share with you. And it's a great transition into the next myth. Ooh, I'm giving away the clickers, wanting to advance too quickly. Okay, so the next myth being that the future is about technology. This is normal for humans to imagine that the future is just about technology because technology is very tangible, and we can see iterative changes in technology. We can see that our phones get bigger or smaller. So the risk of that is we imagine these futures and they feel very sterile and we can't relate to them. Right? We think of images of the Jetsons or flying cars, sci-fi, and actually a lot of people don't realize that sci-fi, like Minority Report, often hire futurists to help develop the script for some of those movies. Now, do we need more utopian sci-fi? Yes, and that's a whole different conversation. But know that some are informed on actual trends and data. However, the future is not about technology. The future is about people. And when we place people at the center of the future, when we make these maps of the future, we understand how they'll use and produce and reframe and use technology as just one potential vehicle in these future worlds. Foresight is a team sport, okay? So when we engage in this work, it's really important to have all different types of perspectives represented because we all have different paths. We all have different worldviews and experiences that shape us to be who we are. So when we engage in foresight work and creating these maps of the future, we're at risk if we're by ourselves or we're with people who are very much like us or had that same past, right? Because it's not that we intentionally do this, but we risk creating these narratives of the future that might be from a place of privilege or not understanding certain barriers that the larger society is facing. Yesterday, I had the opportunity to speak to somebody in South Korea who is interested in attending one of our programs. And he belongs to a new institution called NAFI in South Korea. So it's a government entity that's just started a year ago to really direct the future of policy in South Korea. And interestingly, he said, we want a different future for South Korea, and we understand that we have to get all different voices represented. And it's very similar to the Orlando work that we've been doing. If we want to really change policy and make policy that empowers people, we have to have them involved in this process and see what type of policy do they want. What does that mean from the lives that we're living beyond just the data that we know to be true when we measure it in just a quantitative sense, right? So it's very important part of foresight is to have all of those worldviews and connect perspectives that usually would not be represented. And foresight's very powerful because while we do all have those different pasts and experiences, foresight for the first time allows us to share a common language. So we might have, different dialects, but we can share that same language for the first time to really co-create the futures that we want to emerge. So in foresight, we use a framework called point of impact. And this is to ensure that we are looking always at the human perspective and human implications to the information that we're mining and using to develop these maps of the future. So these questions are areas like what social structures will be created or reframed, what tools and processes will be developed to produce goods and services, what goods and services will we make and how will we consume them? And I'd like to use connect as an example. So what technologies, mediums, and arts will be used to connect people, places, and things? So think of the scenario that I just showed you. Can anybody share with me, just informally, shout it out, how you saw people connecting? How was she connecting to her environment in that scenario? Say that again? Chatting, okay. Phone call.
No actual interaction with people.
No actual interaction, so all virtual. Anything else? Did it feel like it was, so if it wasn't her and it was somebody else in that environment, did it feel accessible for everybody who might live and breathe in that world? No right or wrong answers, that's the beauty of foresight. So just shout it out. I won't hold you to it. Bless you. So I won't put you on the spot just yet. You will be working with these later. So I will at that time. But these are just some prompter examples. So when we're looking at our scenarios or we're looking at trends, we can ask ourselves these questions to ensure that we are looking at the human perspective in all of our scenario development, okay? Now the next thing I want to share with you is geeky. So I'm being very, I'm just being transparent with you. Can somebody tell me somebody that you would just love to meet? Let's keep it to somebody living. Dave Chappelle. All right, talk with him later about that, because that's the whole, I love that. Perfect. Anybody else? Rachel Hollis, yeah. Okay, so mine is not a famous celebrity, comedians, or motivational, business woman. Mine's really geeky, but I'm excited to be able to share this with you today and just be an open book. So if there was somebody that I could meet and I would completely fangirl over, it would be an anthropologist. I know, that's so nerdy, but it's okay. Genevieve Bell. So she is an anthropologist by academic research, and actually her mom is a very well-known anthropologist. She grew up in Sydney, and she would go with her mom to different villages around Australia and study culture and human behavior in these different villages. Fell in love with it and decided that she wanted to practice this for herself, got her PhD, and what's fascinating about her is she didn't stay in the academic space, but she became Intel's corporate anthropologist. And her responsibility was to look at the convergence of culture and how society is using technology, and to understand how they will need to use technology in the future. So she served as their corporate anthropologist for 18 years, and actually the Foresight division, or Foresight members became part of her team. She was the vice president of Insights, and now she's a senior fellow for Intel, and just an awesome human being. And if you're interested in the video I'm about to show you, there's lots of clips out there for you to learn more about her.
The day I knew that we were making a difference, the CEO of the company, Paul Ottolini, stood up and said the future of computing is experiences. That is an extraordinary thing to hear out of the mouth of the CEO of a technology company. Technology is only as good as what it will do for people. Experiences there are the things that are going to matter to us. It's how we connect to our friends and our family, how we entertain ourselves and others, how we manage our lives, how we conduct our day-to-day activities. Experiences is all of that. What do I hope my legacy is? God, that's such a cheesy question. I want to believe I changed the world. And more importantly, that I made it possible for all of other people to do that too. Because it shouldn't just be about you, but it should be about making the space for all of us.
So this is her receiving the Women in Technology Award. So they're asking her, what do you want your legacy to be? But the interesting part here is that she had the CEO realize what the real value is that Intel brings. And it's how does technology create experiences, which is really groundbreaking for a CEO to recognize. We're seeing more of that these days, but that's a critical moment in her tenure and what she was able to kind of transform the mindsets of the C-suite at Intel. So the future is about people, not technology. Genevieve Bell. And if you ever meet her, you better tell her that I told you about her. One of our founders, Yvette Montero Salvatico, we all follow her on Twitter, and Yvette tweeted and Genevieve liked it, and she bragged for days about it. That's the way that she knew she would get back at me, because she's never tweeted at one of my tweets, but there's still time. So myth number 3, futures thinking informs the future. So there's a big misperception about futures thinking and the value of futures thinking, because people think that it's only about the future. And sometimes we do this to ourselves as futurists. We get up and we talk about fancy, sexy trends of the future, and it has a fleeting effect. It's really interesting in the moment, and then people say, so what? What does that mean? What do I do with it? So it loses its value. And the reason is because we have a responsibility as futurists in our field to not say that the future is about the future, but the future is about the present. All right? And really, everything that we're doing, all of the actions that we're taking in the present, inform the future that we want to create or unfold. If we're fearful about the future, if we're optimistic about the future, that all impacts what we'll do right now to either have that aspiration come to today or to avoid and mitigate, right? So another way to explain this, and I probably shared this with you last time, is the push and pull of the future. So we know that there's the past, the present, and the future that operates on a spectrum, right? But people don't often realize that the future operates on a spectrum as well. So there's the push of the future and the pull of the future. And Danielle, I'm going to have you take this slide. I'm just kidding. Danielle is a newly minted certified Foresight practitioner. So she's been through extensive foresight training and probably could talk about this as well. I'm kidding. I had to put her on the spot.
I do want to say, because I know for a lot of you that this is the first time hearing about foresight. It's a lot to kind of take in. But just be encouraged by your participation in YPAC. Our curriculum and our programming, it's meant to challenge you. It's meant to encourage you to think differently. I know you can get a lot of standard professional development programming anywhere, and we want to kind of position ourselves to be different. So if this is a lot for you to take in right now, just let it be a lot to take in. And then you'll keep hearing more about it. We've used Foresight, as Nicole said, in almost everything that the partnership does right now. So it's just important to start grasping ways of thinking differently.
That's an excellent point, because actually when I know that I've done a good job is I make people uncomfortable. It's like my responsibility as a professional is to make you feel uncomfortable. Because this is a completely different way of thinking. It's reframing everything that we do. And as humans, we like to feel comfortable. And there's been studies that show that we feel physically ill when we're at discomfort. So I go into organizations across the globe and make people feel like they want to vomit. Seriously, that is a physical reaction that people have. So thank you, Danielle, for saying that, because this is very different probably than anything you've ever experienced. And it's good because we need different to be successful in the future. Because what we know is not working. So we have to try new possibilities. So the push and pull of the future. The push of the future is what we're really familiar with. It's all of the trends that we're seeing happening. But the thing about the push of the future is that whether you take action on those trends or not, it will push you in a direction. And you have to decide, is that the direction that you want to go in as an individual, as a community, as an organization? What people don't realize is there's this entirely other side of the future, the pull of the future. And that's really the aspirational side. That's where you get to create the future. And a way to describe that is KEDGE, the name of our firm. It's not an acronym, but does anybody know what a KEDGE is if you're in sailing or boating? Oh, good, so I could just tell you whatever and you'd know. No, so the kedge is used on sailing vessels. So when there's no wind at sea, you throw the kedge in the direction that you want to go, and you pull the boat in that direction. And you keep pulling until you get to that place where you want to end up. So it's a great representation of pulling yourself toward those aspirations that, again, you've identified for yourself or your organization or your community. And when you start to embark on foresight work and develop these aspirations, you realize that, say you set these aspirations in the year 2035, you realize that there's no reason to wait until 2035, that you can pull those aspirations to today and make that possibilities of the present or near term. Or know that you have this aspirational vision in mind, and that everything that you're doing, the actions that you're taking today, are leading you in that direction that you've outlined, okay?
We must change almost
Give you a setup on this. So you've probably heard of Greta. Nod heads, yes, thank you. Okay, so Greta is a 16-year-old climate activist. She is located in Sweden, and she's actually been all over the news the last couple of days because she is taking a zero transmission yacht across the entire Atlantic from her country to arrive in New York City for the UN's Global Climate Summit. Okay, so she's been tweeting the entire way because this is her charter. She, wants to change the way that using zero emissions and reducing our carbon footprint. So why take a transportation model that would go against that? She's only 16. So what's even more interesting is she's representing a large group of young climate activists to make a change for the future. So this is her at the World Economic Forum, and I just took one little clip from her.
We must change almost everything in our current societies. The bigger your carbon footprint is, the bigger your moral duty. The bigger your platform, the bigger your responsibility.
Adults keep saying we owe it to the young people to give them hope. But I don't want your hope. I don't want you to be hopeful. I want you to panic. I want you to feel the fear I feel every day. And then I want you to act. I want you to act as if you would in a crisis. I want you to act as if the house was on fire. Because it is.
Has anyone ever heard her speak before? No one's heard her speak before? Okay, so there's lots of different clips on Greta, and I mean, this is, like, it still gives me the chills every time I watch it for a few different reasons. I mean, this is just a small part of it, but to be so powerful and influential at only 16 years old, now that I have a 14-month-old, not only have I always cared about the future and how it will unfold, and I'm obviously passionate about it because this is my work, but I see it in a new light of what the world will look like for her in her future. And a lot of times we'll ask people, you know, what does the world look like 50 years from now? And they say, well, I don't know, I won't be living, but what I do know is I want it to look this way for our youth. And she's really the voice that's representing that perspective, specifically on climate change here. But what I love in this example is that she doesn't want people to be hopeful, you know, for the future around climate change in this example. She wants people to take action in the present. So we see how trends are unfolding and what it means for us in terms of climate change. And what she wants people to do is know what that vision is, you know, and vision means something, you know, different here. We want to avoid that here. And use your influence and your power to do something now. And I think that's also back to what I said in the beginning of the presentation. You all have influence and you have networks. We talked a lot about this in Leadership Orlando 2.0. And if anything, how can you use those connections to really shape the future of this community, right? So final myth, and then we're putting you to work. Are you ready? I know it's Wednesday. I know we're almost there to Friday, but if it makes you feel better, I move my entire house on Friday. Yeah, in the hurricane potentially. So I'm very excited about that, very excited. Okay, so only futurists are equipped to plan the future. This could not be more wrong. This is not an expertise that should be relegated to a select individual or groups of individuals. Everybody needs to think and act like a futurist. If we want to make real change and we want to empower people and see a new future and create that, we all have to be equipped and empowered to do so. So too often, organizations sequester, foresight individuals to one group, and they say, only you can have this expertise. And it's unfortunate for a couple of reasons. One, when budget cuts come, guess who's the first to go in the organization? It's one of the foresight groups, right? But secondly, foresight does its best work when it's participatory and when it feels like the operating system within an organization or a community or your individual operating system. It should run in the background of everything that you're doing and enhancing all of that you already do. It should not feel like an app that has been added to your to-do list that you have no idea how to integrate it or manage because you already have a million things going on, right? It should run in the background, and that's when foresight does its best work. So this is when I'd really like to talk about the work that really launched our relationship with the Orlando Economic Partnership about a year and a half ago. Is they understood that they wanted to pursue a different vision of what the Central Florida community would look like. And they didn't want to use traditional planning processes that we talked about earlier in the presentation. And partnered with us to integrate foresight into creating this vision. So we gathered 200 plus stakeholders from across the community to come together, learn some foresight, and understand how that they could make really strategic transformational outcomes to what the future of Central Florida could be. And went through a number of months in the summer to develop these strategic transformations and prioritized 3 different transformations, that being autonomous connections, wellness cloud, and talent ecosystem, which I'm sure you've heard now in the zeitgeist of the community. And as they identified these aspirations, you can already see how they've been pulling the future to today. For example, autonomous connections being one of the strategic transformations of now, just a couple of months ago, right? Bringing the largest autonomous conference, research conference to Florida in Orlando, where it will now be the hub here. So laying out those visions and connecting that to today. So I wanted to show you OEP's video on the Launch to Tomorrow work so you can see it for yourselves here.
The Orlando region was built by those with a strong vision of tomorrow and the will to make it happen. That ability to turn fantasy into reality is what drives us. We are the Orlando Economic Partnership, and we are preparing to launch to tomorrow. Through the power of partnerships, we are injecting fresh resources and perspectives, taking steps now that build tools and models designed for what's on the horizon. Our explosive growth means we need a plan for the region, because it means we need more of everything for everyone. To get there, we'll focus on 5 strategies that grow the economy, reveal our true character and amplify our story, champion our regional priorities, empower our community's leaders, and build a brilliant region. We're on a path towards prosperity with a vision of success that looks like this. A legion of talent prepared for the high-value jobs that come with a growing and diversified economy. A leader in research and development. An innovation-driven economy that creates the products of tomorrow. A community financially supported by the Foundation for Orlando's Future. We'll show the world a model city built on strong connectivity and mobility. With a population that's inclusive, diverse, and talented, prosperity for all isn't just a nice idea. It's our destination. So join us. Let's create a community bound only by our imaginations and define our economic future. Because with all of you, we got this.
Okay, so to truly make this a participatory effort, that's why I'm here talking to you at YPAC, to get you exposed to this type of thinking. We speak with Leadership Orlando, and then this was kind of the birthplace of developing the Leadership Orlando 2.0 program. So the more people that we can get involved and participatory, efforts of engaging you and beyond, members of the community, and how to create that vision of Central Florida, that's what we need. Everybody has to think like a futurist. With that said, I'm going to put you to work, all right? So I have minted you all futurists today and from this point forward. And in a minute, I'm going to show you the same video that the 200 stakeholders saw to give them inspiration to develop their strategic transformations. So know that when you see that, it's the same video they used to develop their ideas. Now, they went through a number of exercises to do so, but that stretched their minds. And that's really important with foresight, is our brains are like rubber bands, all right? So we stretch them, we stretch them, we stretch them, and we know that there will be a natural recoil, So our goal is to use all of that, trend and data and creativity and intuition fueled scenarios to stretch the brain, stretch it, understand new possibilities and opportunities, knowing that it will recoil a bit, so that we can suspend disbelief and really think of new possibilities that we would not have before. So know that when you see these scenarios, they are rich, rich, rich in data and research to develop them. So oftentimes people say, that's ridiculous. Well, you can say that's ridiculous, and it's a good way to always challenge yourself, but these are things that are happening in different pockets of the world already, and suggesting a new way that they could all converge and collide, and what that means for our future, okay? So we are going to use those 5 point of impact questions, again, in our exercise, to understand human implications as you move through these worlds that you're about to see. So I'll show you 3 scenarios of the future of cities, and your responsibility is to act like you are a citizen in those worlds, okay? Act like you are walking around, being educated, playing, working, what you would do day in the life right now, but day in the life in these worlds, okay? And now I want you to flip over the paper that is in the center of your table. And you have been assigned a question, one of the point of impact questions. So, spot check, tell me what your question is here. Connect. Number 1. So you're the connect team. What are you guys? Frame. Use. Okay, get the idea? So in question number 1, it will tell you what question you are assigned. So have that in mind as you're watching these videos, that's what you're thinking about, all right? Again, do not stress. There is no right or wrong answers here. You can have fun as you live in these worlds. I saw some heavy breathing, and it's okay. It will be okay. There are some suggested thought starters for each of the questions to give you inspiration of what to look at as you're viewing these worlds. If you feel like there's a lot going on, I'm going to give you a link to the video, so if your group wants to watch it again afterwards when you're talking, you're more than welcome to do so, okay? So I'd recommend taking some notes while you watch the video. And then the second part of this exercise is going to be that pledge. So based on the discussion that you have as a group around your point of impact question, I'm going to have you pledge to an action that you'll take today as young influential leaders in your community of how you will either impact an aspirational vision you talked about at your table or avoid maybe a risk that you outlined based on your discussions. Okay? How does it sound? Thank you. Okay. Here we go. Okay, so hopefully that will fuel inspiration for your discussions at your table. Focus on your point of impact question that your group has been assigned, and then use that to develop the pledge. The pledge is what will quickly do a fast report out, as many tables as we can get to, of what you pledge, and that, in essence, holds you all accountable of what you can do to really guide the future of the Central Florida community, okay? Any questions? Yes?
Do we select one of the cities, or are we doing scenarios for all three?
Great question. So really think of a combination of all of those cities, because it all painted different aspects of potential futures of cities, so you can use all of them. Great question.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so go for it. Start talking. I know this is speed futuring, but start to think of your pledge at this point for a couple of minutes, okay? Speed round. Take about a minute and a half to wrap up your thoughts, wrapping up your pledge. All right, everyone, if I could have your attention back to the front, Now that we've talked about debunking foresight myths, I feel comfortable passing the 8-ball to you, because you know that's not what I do. We love the giant 8-ball. So I am going to just pass it to one table. We have just a few minutes, so we're going to do speed pledging, okay? So I'll give it to the first table. Maybe point and elect a spokesperson right now. So at your table, so you know who will report out. And since you pointed at me, I think you're ready. I'm going to start off with you. All right, so everybody listen. Listen to what your pledges are. And I know I won't be with you, but I would encourage you to talk about these further in different sessions and how you can hold each other accountable. All right, so off to you. Listen up.
To see how connected in technology everything was and how involved governments were. So we wanted to pledge that maybe the focus isn't centric on a government type public focus, but more of a business co-op focus where everybody has buy-in. So with everybody's buy-in, these little micro cities, everybody's part owner with the free technology and the free public transportation, and everybody has access and ownership and responsibility to where they live and what they do. And of course, our priority of connectivity was for physical connection. Even though technology is connecting us, we still are physically speaking or seeing and being in our connected world.
Excellent. Pass it to your next victim.
So good morning, I'm Jimmy Hoffman with VHB. Our group had the produce question, so...
It might have been me, I was close to that.
The produce question. So we focused on how engineering, production, wealth management, and innovative processes are going to affect the future. And we talked about things like vertical farming and integration of industrial areas, additive manufacturing, how we're taking all these things that used to be decentralized and are integrating them into our landscape so people have the needs and technologies close at hand. So we pledge to search for ways to make technology and services more adaptable so that as the social landscape changes, we can evolve and not just have these white elephants that are difficult to maintain, but we can integrate and be able to adapt to the future to keep us all alive and change the landscape.
Great job, thank you. Look at what we're developing in just under an hour. It's incredible. You pick who's next.
Ours was kind of culturally, so we noticed within the videos there was kind of accessibility.
Can everyone hear him?
Ours was culturally, so we noticed that there was access. One of the items that was within the video, I believe, 32, there was accessibility to knowledge, of course, free healthcare, and then therefore, of course, that equates to wealth as well. So I think that another one, there was avatars and so forth, where you kind of learn apathy through the avatar and experiences of others. So culturally, as we have kind of a written pledge, we pledge to leverage technology to create access for all to knowledge, health, and wealth, pledging to create a society where we connect through technology to learn of others' experiences culturally that will continually create equality. So that's kind of our formal, or somewhat, we all had different ones, but formal pledge there culturally.
Great, thank you for sharing. Who's next?
I wouldn't know that part.
Hey, I'm Kelly Fitzpatrick with CNL. So we had Frame, and we did discuss the video and the different cities, and it was all, very interesting, and we kind of came up with, how are we going to frame, like, what's our pledge, right? So everyone had very valuable input to offer, and we kind of, discussed how historically Orlando's always been a very welcoming city, and very inclusive, and allowing, a variety of people to get involved regardless of kind of where you came from or your socioeconomic status, things like that. So our pledge was kind of focused on, continuing Orlando's reputation of being an inclusive city and affording opportunities to anyone willing to work for them. And then also, identifying talent in all different areas of society, and kind of making it your responsibility to, help cultivate talent when you see it in others, regardless of kind of what type of setting or professional background they're in.
Excellent. When we formed these videos, a large aspect of it was looking at what's in the DNA of the community already and what's made us thrive. And inclusion was one of those aspects. So I'm so glad that you picked up on it and had that as part of your pledge. So we'll do one more group to wrap us up.
All right.
That's my style, small passes.
Okay, so ours was use, and we had a tough time with this. I think we had to really think this over. I personally think of Back to the Future. I think it's the third movie where they're in the future, and there's like a pizza in the microwave, and it's made in like 30 seconds. So we thought about things being more automotive within goods, even like with a farm, instead of actual farmers, things being automotive within like a greenhouse. And then avatars, and just having like a credit score above your head is terrifying. I think things will be more accessible, which is terrifying in itself. And so we pledged to embrace technology, but embrace the importance of connectivity, of being a human being. So I think that with the future, if it is this way, there will be threats of a lot of people having ADD because there's going to be a lot of things going on. Laziness, potential more obesity because things will be super accessible and easy to reach, and loss of jobs, which is super scary because we are human beings and we should be putting ourselves first over technology. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I'll just share one more comment is when you present people's scenarios, you should always be thinking of the positive and negative implications and how it can unfold in multiple ways. Even if the scenario seems more utopic, there still can be those challenges inside of them. So excellent job. All right, well, thank you guys so much for your time today. It was a pleasure being with you again. I know it was speed featuring round 2, but I hope that you at least know more about the field and how that could impact you as persuading your community as leaders and what that means for the future of Central Florida.
Not easy to stand in front of a group of people like a lot of us know. So thank you, Nicole. You did a great job. One of the things that we heard earlier in the presentation is the future is about people. And there's a quote from the director of the London School of Economics that says, the jobs of the past were about muscles. The jobs of the present are about brains. But the jobs of the future are about heart. And so I just love that we're continuing to focus on our future, but reminding ourselves of how human we are and how human-centric everything still needs to be. So thank you guys for participating. In my email, we mentioned that we have a few announcements about the future of YPAC. We are so excited about how this program is transforming and, did I die? We'll continue to transform this fall. And to kind of guide us just very briefly, we'll introduce a lot more throughout the month of September and at our first kickoff meeting in October. But I'd like to introduce John Davis, who's the Executive Vice President of the Orlando Regional Chamber, a fellow Seminole, go Noles. And John's going to talk to us about the important role that YPAC plays in the future of the Chamber.
All right. Good morning again to everyone. Jeez. You can express a little bit more excitement. As Danielle mentioned, first I'd just like to thank Nicole for that wonderful presentation on the impact of foresight on our community. And as mentioned, it's already been mentioned before, you know, I was fortunate enough to have a chance to go through that process. And I know just sitting here in the room and being introduced to something of this nature, for some of you perhaps maybe your first time, and it can be a bit overwhelming. I can recall even being a part of the leadership team here, and we would be in meetings and just trying to understand what in the heck is this?